Hi guys, I'm Shmee. Hello, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Where's Shmee Euro Tour, where today you join me in Affalterbach in Germany, the home of AMG. Now the reason we're here is that this facility houses the engine production and manufacturing, and today we're going to be going to see where exactly the engine for my soon to arrive AMG G63 is being built. It's not all that long until the car arrives now, so I'm very excited to see the heart, the power plant in assembly. Let's do this then, head on in and check it out. I've driven here today in the GTC Pool, so parked next to a rather fantastic GT 4-door 63S First Edition. There's also a GLC 63S just behind me too. Now these, of course, share the 4-litre Biturbo V8 that we're going to be exploring today. And I'm actually going to come through to the showroom quickly, where there is a fantastic display here. This is the M178 engine. So this is like the engine that's found in my AMG GTR with the dry sump lubrication. The M177 is the engine we're going to be seeing today going into the G63, which has a wet sump and a few differences around the outside, but based on that block that we've seen and absolutely love. Now if I just swing through here very quickly to show you inside the showroom, we've got the new A35, there we've got a GT 4-door 63S, an E53 with the 3-litre inline 6 supported by EQ Boost, and at the back the C63 limousine. So let's, I think, head straight on though, because I'd quite like to see how this is all going to work. Welcome then to where the magic happens. So there are two different parts to the engine assembly here. The room behind me is where cars with the 4-wheel drive systems, for example, like the G63, the AMG GT 4-door, the E63, the S63, those are assembled on this line. The other line up the other way is more the 2-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive cars like the C63 or the AMG GT. So my GTR's engine was built just up that way. This side though, we're going to be following down the line to see various of the different stages, and I've already started learning a little bit about how to detect which engine is which. So we're going to be focusing on the installation of pistons and then turbos, which is pretty relevant because these are engines that, despite being turbocharged, sound absolutely fantastic. Now it all starts right here. The engine blocks actually arrive. There's a system so that they're then taken to be assembled. A cart comes to collect the block, but they're assembled in engine number order. They've been stamped already, got the engine numbers. So for example here, this side is going to be going first. That's the next engine to be taken towards being built. They then head over, well actually you can see where they've arrived, from transport arrived here. They're then taken by one mechanical engineer to go up the line. And of course AMG have their very famous one man, one engine. Effectively one person, man or woman, is in charge of an engine from the very beginning all the way around until completion, where it then gets their name plaque on the top, which is always quite a cool part of the whole process. So we're going to be going along this way to see where it's all going to be happening. We're on the line, we're starting off then. I am joining Lars here.
Hello.
How's it going?
Good. And you?
Very, very good. So we are going to see exactly how the early stages of this G63 block come together. Now some of you might be wondering, is this my exact engine? Well, it's actually quite interesting how this side of the process works. They start working on them here, but with transport and logistics ahead, they aren't yet actually assigned to the final car. So customers can't choose who's going to be building their engine, or even exactly which will be their engine when it gets to the assembly plant for the entire car, which in this case is done in Graz in Austria, so about 700 kilometers or so away from here. Now the block itself, this is something that I noticed that stood out. Every component has a QR code. That's for traceability, so that they can actually find each component that's gone into it. And even the equipment that's then used for torquing also has QR codes, so they know exactly what was used in case there are any issues in testing, and it can all be found later. We've been having a little look at the block as well, and you'll see this super shiny surface that it has inside the cylinders, which is all to do with basically the lubrication and making it as smooth as possible, particularly when it's cold, so that the pistons can move without creating additional wear. That goes straight in, and the first piston is in place. You can see here, of course, 8 pistons, 8-cylinder engine. The engine itself is actually rather small overall, but this is, well, one of the first significant stages, the system monitoring everything along the way, keeping track. Just have a look at the lubrication process before that goes in. Just like so. through from the back, and that is done. And of course this can rotate, pivot around to make it all a little bit easier, but the cart is responsible for taking that unit all the way through, down the various stages and around until it's a completed engine. There are many stages to this, and Lars is clearly doing a lot of work behind the scenes, but even the rings that you can see have to be lined up on the opposite sides. This is quite a technical and skilled job to make sure that there's no loss of compression or anything like that. And, well, I'm only touching on the surface of the work. Of course, these guys are doing this non-stop, and Lars is actually a trainer here as well, but the first piston in there on the other side, and we will very shortly be able to actually turn the engine and see everything moving. There's tests done at pretty much every stage, but you can see again more checking and ensuring all is correct before that's then lubricated to actually be installed. This is the tool then to give this a little test. So, block is rotating around. Well, that's interesting to see underneath. Wow, there's a lot going on here. Of course, it needs to be lubricated before any major rotation. The connecting rods get secured on the other side with the clasps. Again, you can see the QR codes on each of those as they go into place. The tool's in action then to ensure that every nut and bolt is torqued correctly. Now it is time to rotate it back up again so that we can see exactly how this is working. Of course, again, this is an inspection time to make sure everything is operating completely correctly, but that's always quite fun to see, given that when the engine is entirely assembled, you will never be able to see this again. What I'm going to show you now is something particularly interesting to me, the differences between the various AMG engines. And to show this, we've actually borrowed a part from the other line. So when the G63 is delivered in a couple of months' time, I'll be in the very lucky position of having both that and the AMG GTR, two engines that were both produced in this plant. There are some fundamental differences between them though, despite the fact that they both have exactly 585 horsepower. So the GTR, being a sports car, has a dry sump and makes 700 Newton meters. The G63, being an off-roader, has a wet sump and makes 850 Newton meters. And behind me are some of these components so that you can see the differences. So on the stool here, the part that we've borrowed is a dry sump from an AMG GT. You can see it's very narrow. That's of course to help with keeping the weight of the engine low. The GTR has a very, very low front bonnet. Low weight helps with the sports car's handling characteristics. Behind, you have the wet sump oil pans for the different cars. So this is for the E or the S. You can see that there's the drive shaft that goes actually directly through it. In the G, where there's more space available, it's actually a slightly different setup, leaving room for that to go underneath. But you can tell instantly whether you're looking at an engine from a G or one of the other models as they make their way around the line here after they've gone past this stage. And the difference between is actually really interesting to be able to see up front and see how it makes that height difference when they're installed inside the car and what ultimately makes them have different power outputs and driving characteristics. Continuing up the line, you can see all of the different components that arrive to be installed. So here, for example, you have the cylinder head, the complete assembly. If we come around, I think just been placed here, the top cover is taken off, but you can see directly inside the camshaft, variable timing, and in fact the tool that's then installed onto the top of that to actually help and set the timing. Come through, I think this one's just been done and being reassembled, as you can see. And keep just showing you as the engine actually builds as we come through towards here, one of the main stages where the testing of it is done. It's hooked up, all connected and wired into the machine right above it that can run a whole series of different tests and ensure that everything is up to standard, meeting the requirements. But at this stage, we haven't yet seen the installation of the turbos, which is where we're going to be heading next. This is our engine then. There are the turbos. Lars is going to install these right now, but the way this engine is set up is with the hot inner V, so the turbos go inside the two banks of the engine, which does mean that it actually gets up to 900 degrees. There is a bi-turbo setup. Each turbo is a twin scroll, as you can see just from the way it's being inserted, and actually inside it rotates at 185,000 RPM, 3,000 rotations per second, 900 degrees, the cold section and the hot section. You can see exactly how all of this works. And then there's a tool right above that actually lines it up so that when the exhaust is connected afterwards, everything can be absolutely present as it should be. But the turbos, we just come and have a quick look at these a little bit closer. Again, there are some differences between the turbos that go onto the different engines. I couldn't tell you all of the details and then all the other components that are required around them, but you can see the different aspects and parts of this as we have the right one installed, awaiting the left that will follow. but sitting, which basically allows for a very compact engine shape overall versus having them on the more conventional side of the exterior. The disadvantage is that it requires additional heat and cooling management for the temperatures that result from doing that. And also I noticed down here, of course, you can see it's a G from the shape of the oil pan, but it actually gets even deeper. It's 11 litres of oil actually stored down there. And now we can see in a second the installation literally of the second one. Again, the lubrication, all of the piping that has to run being managed into different areas. But this is exactly how it's done. Well, this is a G63 engine in build right now, without knowing actually at this second where this engine is going to end up in the world. Of course, it will head to Graz when it's completed. But the turbo's there, installed, sitting on the very top. These are then lined up, and I'll point out also there is more scanning, more QR codes that you can see all around on all of the different parts. Literally every component has one of these QR codes, even the internal components, so that they can ensure and trace where they've all come from, where they all go. It's actually quite fun. You can see them even on the pipes running around the outside, every bit. Just in case in the future it's ever required to see when it was done. And that stores who installed them, when they were installed, all the details, when they were supplied, where they came from, scanning happening just there at the tool that's being used to torque, the tool preset to torque everything to the exact number required. You can see what's going on just inside there at the moment. Although we've seen some of the main parts of the process, the pistons, the turbos, you can imagine that there's quite a lot more down the line behind me. So right behind us, they're getting the wiring looms installed. You also have the various brackets, the intercooler has to be fitted, and a lot more that you can imagine as well. And then you get towards the end here where it's time to fill this engine with oil. This is done before it's taken for some small testing that's done here before the engine goes over to Graz. But literally it connects in two different places. At the top, at the normal filler, which is of course where you can access the oil yourself from the car after delivery, but also to do the pressure down below. It goes straight in to the lower section, and you can see here as well how it will continue again being scanned. But this basically gets filled with oil, ready to be tested, and this is a G63 engine again, you can see from right down beneath, that is going to find itself into a car just like mine somewhere around the world. And in fact, I mean, by all coincidences, that could end up being mine. Mine will come down this exact path. It will have gone around this almost horseshoe around the engine assembly plant here until it's ready to be taken off, loaded up here and sent off on its travels. The engine is complete. The plaque that will be worn in the engine bay is just there as well. That actually gets installed at the main assembly plant when this has been married to an actual car itself. But because this whole power plant weighs 207 kilos, of course that needs some pretty sturdy equipment to help lift it off, where it then gets taken, mounted here to go for the cold testing. Now a lot of people do wonder whether the engines are tested, and of course we've seen them being tested in many different ways throughout the process, but they do go to have a cold running test before a hot running test. They're tested in batches before they will then be taken away. This just gets guided into position onto the system here that will take them off towards that testing process before they're tested again when they get to Graz or wherever it may be for the assembly of the different models along the lines. But this has been a fascinating process to see exactly how the engine that's going to be in my G63 is built here by AMG in Affalterbach. This is another pretty special place to be visiting. So we've popped over to HWA. Now HWA in the past have been responsible for the likes of the CLK GTR, the building of the SL65 Black Series was right here, but now it's home to the AMG GT3 and the GT4 cars. Now I got to experience driving an AMG GT4, many familiarities with the AMG GTR. Of course the GT4 class of racing has to share lots of parts of the bodywork, but very much a proper out and out race car. As you can actually see, if we have a quick glance at the interior of this, this is the prototype that actually won on its first race, but you can see the full seat, the steering wheel, quite hardcore, but importantly, sharing the front mid-engine layout of the 4-litre Biturbo V8 found underneath the bonnet. Now if we just come through, actually you can see one of those here, many differences from the G engine that I've been learning about, but many similarities to the GTR road car engine. You can see the carbon fibre prop shaft coming through towards the gearbox, and over on this side is the actual line where all the GT4 and GT3s are built, so you can see the difference. The GT4s have the regular bodywork, the GT3s have carbon fibre bodywork on them. but they've sold over 100 of each in the customer racing programs, which is quite cool. And here we are having a look around, exploring and discovering more about it. You can see the wiring loom in here, but otherwise pretty stripped out at the early stages, and all the different parts as well that arrive at HWA ready for assembly. So the engines, this 4-litre biturbo V8 goes as far as a proper off-roader with the G63 to the GT4 cars. The GT3 cars have a different engine, the 6.2 V8, as opposed to the 4-litre biturbo. But pretty cool, it has to be said. At this end are the completed cars ready to head on out. These are GT3s, of course, and you can see the carbon fibre. Now, customers can actually choose to paint them or to wrap them. If you paint the car, you add around 4 kilos of weight to it by the time you blacken it due to the ripples that you get with the carbon weave. If you wrap it, it's about 2.5 kilos. So that's normally the way, especially when cars have to get parts replaced in future. And I also quite like that splitter guard that's currently on it for transportation. That's something that I wouldn't mind having for various cars when I'm moving them around. Side exit exhaust down there as well on the GT3s. But just look at that line. These are all prepared, ready to head on out, be tested, and then go racing. This is now somewhere particularly of interest to me. These are some of the samples from the AMG Performance Studio. Now, the Performance Studio can do some bespoke changes away from the normal manufacturer's specification. In here are some things they've done in the past. They may not be able to redo them now. Also, not a completely exhaustive list as well. Many things are up to the customer's imagination. But just looking around, for example, the outer pinstripe painted on that wheel, the central console here from the AMG GT, that V8 that you have in the middle, painted in solar beam yellow, one of my favourite colours. In the past, I mean, these steering wheels are clearly the older design, I think, from the SLS, but you can see the pinstriping that was done on those back at the time. Lots of different paint samples. Look at these that we have here. Particularly cool, the oranges, metallic orange, different blues. That's actually more my line down here. Even an almost flip paint on that green. Some embroideries, some stitching, the different materials you can see for the interior as well around here. This is absolute dreamland for me. These are the kind of things I love looking at. Look at those paints. Absolutely incredible. Just some examples from the past, things that have been made before, but fascinating to see and think about for the future AMG to add. Maybe we'll have to see what happens with GTR Pro and the like, but yeah, this is what I love looking at. Here then, very aptly, we have two AMG G63s here in the Performance Studio for the works that they're actually having done. In the case of the white car, it's getting an entirely new bespoke interior. The other car, some smaller touches as well, but they're certainly whetting my appetite for the soon-to-arrive Shmeemobile. So the inevitable questions, when is it going to be on the production line in Graz, and when is it going to be delivered? I'm going to be heading to Austria to see the car in build very soon. Naturally, I cannot wait to see that and to share it with you as well. Then it won't be too much longer until delivery of the car over in the UK. I think maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks or so, that kind of thing. But I'll be sure to let you know more when I see it being assembled as well. But what a visit today to see the engine assembly, to see the plant where the engines that go into these cars, into the future Shmeemobile, are put together by one man, one engine, right here in Affalterbach. So a big thanks to the team who have hosted me today, to Lars as well, of course, who featured earlier doing the assembly of that engine. But I cannot wait now. It's not all that long until a G-Wagon arrives in the garage. So thank you very much for watching, guys. As always, really appreciate your support, but that's it for this time. I'll see you again very soon. Cheers.